It's not about the taste of the chocolate, it's about the people you share it with. Wonka was written and directed by Paul King, who did Paddington 1 and 2, Electric Barreloo, and also was written by Simon Farnaby, that I kept wanting to call Farm Boy because evidently I need to rewatch The Princess Bride again. This is based on the work by Roald Dahl, who hated the first movie and wasn't around for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, directed by Tim Burton. I did reviews of both of those. You can check out my feelings on those particular movies, but I'll spoil one thing right now because fuck you, and because those movies are old. I like the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory a whole lot more than the Tim Burton version. Even though I like Tim Burton movies, yeah, nevertheless. So this is the origin story of Wonka, Willy Wonka, the amazing chocolatier. Willy Wonka's origin is here. Let's boogie. So if you want to view Paradise, simply look around and view it, and then you can see Timothée Chalamet as Willy Wonka like there's nothing to it. Timothy, by the way, was in Bones and All, which was a tremendous movie. Very dark, very, very dark. Mark Rylance was tremendous. The young lady from Waves, whose name I always forget for some reason, even though I love Waves. That was a great movie. Timothy is a very, very good actor. Admittedly, I wasn't necessarily too excited about this due to the aforementioned Tim Burton version, and also, was anybody really crying out for an origin story of Wonka? I mean, I guess, because they threw $125 million at this and had a pretty big marketing campaign and said, well, we'll put Hugh Grant in as an Oompa Loompa. And let me just say right now that while I do make short jokes occasionally, just a few, they always go over their head, har, they can't reach anything off the second shelf. Yeah, there should be more representation of people that are vertically challenged because, look, it's hard for them to get roles. Peter Dinklage was in the most recent Hunger Games movie, and yeah, he certainly was in that, and that movie certainly existed. Hugh Grant, though, has a little bit of a role in this. Cal Lane, who played Noodle, that becomes Willy Wonka's friend, so to speak, she's fine. The chemistry between those two particular people, they're fine. Timothy and Calla, they're fine. They make the most of their characters. And there's a whimsical nature to this, but there's also a hollowness. And that's probably tipping you as exactly how I felt about this movie. Timothy can sing, and actually has a couple decent numbers. The first few songs are all right, and then they start to dissolve to almost Charlie and the Chocolate Factory territory, and right around the territory of like the song that Charlie's mom sang in the first one, i.e. the one bad song or the one song. And you have Patterson Joseph, who is Slugworth, who's a terrific actor, by the way. I do want to say that. You have the aforementioned Hugh Grant. You have Keegan-Michael Key, who apparently is just going to be in any kids movie that they offer him, because he was in a couple Netflix originals, one Christmas one that came out last year, or maybe it's 2021. He's just been in a lot of shit. Also Matt Lucas. And then you also have a German guy that was so goddamn close to being Adolf Hitler, it was actually frightening. He's like, we must eradicate the other chocolate makers. I was only following orders. Ever! Anyway, now that I've pretty much ran everybody off doing that, let's talk about the movie. Yeah, it's an origin story. Again, Timothy. So Willy and Noodle, those characters are fine. There's basically this plot where he ends up, having these bright, fresh-faced ideas. He's this fresh-faced lad, bright ideas of making his own chocolate factory. But he's got to fight the system, basically. And he's got to fight another system. And it sort of reminded me of Nanny McPhee, just the way it was filmed, like really, really close to some of the, less pleasing-looking actors, less cosmetically pleasing-looking individuals. It had moments that were fine, and then had a lot of moments that just didn't hit with me. There's a parental, a mother-son aspect that may hit for people that felt that loss, and I'm not saying they didn't try with that, but this also was just as long as the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie, and felt a little bit longer than it needed to. Like, there were enough breezy parts to it, but it also felt very unnecessary. Like, as far as an origin story, it's like, okay, we see this, great. He had these bright ideas, and he wanted to help people. And yeah, there were some cool special effects. I do question how he was able to make all this chocolate. I mean, they sort of explain it, but they sort of kind of don't. I mean, he just had these ideas from his mother, and then also from stuff that led to the Oompa Loompa being involved in his life and how all this happened. I don't know. it had moments, but just didn't fully click to me. I think overall this is kind of a swing and a miss, shall we say. Kids will like it, and if you like the first one though, if the first one's your favorite, this is not going to reach above that. I mean, I don't think it might, but I think a lot of people will enjoy this more than Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But overall, I can't necessarily say that I recommend this beyond Timothy and Kala did a good job with their respective performances. Everybody else, I don't know. The comedy didn't really hit for me. Anyway, 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. Okay, so his mother died, left him some ideas as far as how to make chocolate. She had been really, really good about making chocolate. The Oompa Loompa got involved and kept taking his candy that he was making and these big old jars that he apparently just ended up having because Willie had gone to this particular island and stolen these particular cocoa bean things that almost looked like 300-foot tall papayas. Actually, I think they were only like maybe maybe a foot, but nevertheless, giant papayas. Papaya. I think that was a Baby Metal song. Bet you didn't expect a Baby Metal reference there in this particular review. So, how did Willie end up in this particular situation? He ends up with some money in his pocket, gives money to various people while doing this singing and everything, breaks a pumpkin, so that's 3 silver pieces. They called it something, but I watched Poor Things. It was a lot better than that, and I just totally pushed it out of my mind. It's kind of like in the beginning of an RPG when you don't have a lot of gold and you have to pick between either buying a really good weapon or a really good piece of armor. Or like in Suikoden 2, which is a video game that I absolutely loved. It was certainly more well thought out than this. It's also longer, a lot longer, because it was an RPG. But Willie ends up signing this contract with this particular, like hotel washing, place with these 2 ugly people. And he ends up signing his contract, not listening to Noodle, trying to whisper, hey, always read the fine print. So basically, he is pretty much a slave to them, shall we say, and has to pay off his debts. He also wasn't able to open up his chocolate shop before this because even though he had a lot of really cool chocolate and everything, Slugworth and others blew him off, and Keegan-Michael Key, the chief of police, is in their pocket. And then he eventually comes up with this idea, hey, Noodle, help me, I'll help you. I have this great spread of concoctions that apparently they just allowed him to keep. I would have just said, hey, wait a second, instead of having this cheap labor, you could have easily turned that into a chocolate shop and you could have taken 50% of the profits. You could have been like Vern Gagne and not given a proper split, and then he would have left for WWE and killed your goddamn wrestling company. Vern! Anyway, enough about wrestling. Let's get back to this. Willie comes up with this idea, hey, Noodle, help me out. There's these others that are there, including a character named Lot, who I can't remember the young lady's name right now. I say young lady because she's only a little bit younger than me, but God, she was gorgeous. Oh, sweet Jesus. Oh, sweet Jesus, she was gorgeous. Apparently with a phone operator and this kind of stuff, and she didn't talk much, but then talked a whole ton. Gorgeous actress. Good God. I need to see more stuff that she was in. There are other characters in this. They come up with this idea to use the sewer system, the storm drain, to sell the chocolate because the chief of police is helping, Slugworth and his goons, including the aforementioned Adolf Hitler clone, try to, keep any other chocolate makers down. Also, they water down their chocolate and keep a whole bunch of chocolate in this pit that they use as a reserve, and just they skim off the profits, but they keep all this stuff and they can just use it for a while in this giant vat in the earth. And Mr. Bean's also there as a cleric, and there's this giant conglomeration where and setup where you give him a piece of chocolate and he lowers you into this area. And yeah, it had Mr. Bean in it. It turned out not to be very entertaining. That's an accomplishment. But they use the storm drain system. They do more songs. They sell more stuff. They come up with more money. And the Oompa Loompa basically shows up to get his pound of flesh, shall we say, because Willie ended up taking that stuff from him. Not meaning it as a dickish move, but because this Oompa Loompa, that's called Oompa Loompa, by the way, doesn't have an actual name. Not a name that's worth remembering, at least. He ended up being kicked off the island and came up with his ways to do all this stuff and get his pound of flesh, bring it back 1,000-fold, set a whole bunch of stuff. I like Hugh Grant, but I didn't like Hugh Grant in this. And It ends up where basically they're at a crossroads, so you won't be lonely. See you at the crossroads, so you won't be lonely. Where Willie has the first chocolate or the last chocolate bar that his mom made, and has the stuff, and he ends up they come up with some money, earning all this stuff, and they build a big shop. And they build a shop, and it's great. And then there was some sabotage candy that caused everybody to basically turn, into giant furry creatures, like they were the giant creature from that one Bugs Bunny cartoon, the giant red one. I forget the name. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've committed a lot of those titles to memory. You know which one I'm talking about. So the shop goes tits up, gets set on fire. They're going to rebuild, but no, Willie's like, we can't do this. He ends up making a deal with Slugworth, shall we say, to have all this money, to pay off their debts, but he can never make chocolate again. He's got to go to the North Pole, where you can seemingly make chocolate for Santa Claus. He could. The elves would probably like it. But he was going to help Noodle, but he wanted to give Noodle a good life, and Noodle had a really, really long, sheet of, debts. It turns out, by the way, that Noodle actually, her debt was to keep her there. That money was to keep her there because Slugworth demanded it. Why? Because Slugworth inherited the Chocolate Empire after his brother died, and the mother showed up with the daughter. The daughter that was Noodle. Noodle was not her actual name, by the way. And that's pretty much what led to that. Also, the bookkeeper that was locked in this, laundromat hotel area was the substitute one for Slugworth, and realized that there were two different books, and if the police ever got a hold of the real one, they would find out how much they were skimming and all that. Well, they end up eventually finding that. But then, Willie and Noodle get locked in this chocolate vat. They're about to be submerged. And then the Oompa Loompa shows up to get his stuff back. He was going to get the jar of candy that Willie had made that he had given Slugworth, but Slugworth and his cohorts ate the whole goddamn thing. Between the three of them, because there was a candy that made them float. Not like the horror movie Float, that wasn't very good. They end up getting caught. And Keegan-Michael Key, by the way, by this point, is about 8 million pounds. He's like a character from Metal Slug when they ate a whole lot. If you know what I'm talking about, that's a real deep cut for video game fans. And his name's mentioned in the book, so he's going to be taken care of. And all this stuff's happening, and by the way, the Oompa Loompa rescued Willie and Noodle. Because basically, the Oompa Loompa says, no, I'm going to come, keep coming back, and I'm going to get your candy to pay back my debt. And because he was seen as the king of the Oompa Loompas and everything. And then Willie's like, oh, hey, here's this jar of candy that he just happened to have in his pocket. They forgot all about the laundromat debt thing for a while, too. And it just seemed like the plot was messy. The Oompa Loompa was like, okay, I'll just go. And then, wait, I'm not actually that revered back on my lot. Willie helps Noodle get all the stuff. Reunites Noodle with her mother. Her mother apparently was still alive. That was a cool moment. Took forever to get there. And then he sees his castle. And ends up, coming up with this plan. And he puts all these special effects on the screen about what it's going to look like. The giant factory that's on a... I don't remember the factory being on a mountain, in a mountainous area in a castle. But whatever. I mean, I don't know. I don't really get C+. It's a C+. It's better than the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie that, to be perfectly quite honest, is barely I think it's like a D. It's really a downgrade. This is a C+. It's got moments, but it's not all that great. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Rickland. I'll see you soon.